Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for FourCast is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
What sort of future do you think we're heading for? How will we live as we slip into the 21st century?
Welcome to FourCast episode 91. I'm Tom Merritt.
And I'm Scott Johnson.
And once again, Scott Johnson, we are joined by two fabulous folks to help us look deeply into the future and also shallowly into the
Absolutely.
future. Yeah. Joining us today, Joel Duggan, cartoonist, illustrator, and podcaster who just had a reunion with Scott Johnson before the show.
Yeah, we were actually on a podcast about a year ago on StarCast with Garrett and Kyle.
Excellent.
That was about a year ago, wasn't it? Ooh.
Yes.
Time flies, man. But
Yeah,
it's
it
really
really
good
does.
to have you back on. And at the time, I had no face to put with the voice. Now I do, and I suppose I'm better for it.
Well, welcome, Joel. Thanks for joining us today. Also joining us, Todd Gnomewise Whitehead. He is the founding member of Versus the World Productions, host of Casually Hardcore, Alpha Geek Radio, and Alpha Geek Interviews, and Gnomish Overlord, the tallest gnome you'll ever meet.
This is indeed what we find.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us, Todd. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we start with a prediction from a listener, and Fred actually was nice enough to send us a video comment about the possibility of wearable illuminated clothing. We talked about that in episode 89. In his email, he said that his prediction, which he doesn't talk about in the video, is that before the 2018 presidential election, the actions of a group like Anonymous or WikiLeaks will force a redo in at least one major U.S. election. That's his prediction, but he's actually working on the future as part of his job. Take a look at what he sent us.
Hey FourCast, my name's Fred Lyran, and the machine behind me is used for making nanofibers. And I'm going to walk through with you how on episode 89, why this machine is relevant to your question about wearable, illuminatable clothing. So there's a couple ways I can make clothing that I can illuminate and change. I can make a TV, but it doesn't have very good breathability. The other way you can make it is by working with some smart people like at the NC State College of Textiles, and you'd use a weave or a modified yarn so you'd have good breathability. You could also use a nanofiber layer like what we'd make on that machine back there. But the probability of making a TV with breathability is much, much less than the probability of making this weave or this nanofiber with the right kind of illumination technology. So I'm going to have to tell you that this is going to be the way to go, and it's probably at least 10 years away. Thanks a lot. Love the show.
Hey, thanks, Fred. That's pretty awesome that he's actually there in a lab working on making the things that will make illuminated clothing.
And Tom, 10 years is all away? That's exciting to me. Like, if that stuff's that close, that's nearer term than I suspected. And, you know, this is one that keeps coming up. It's really great to have a smart listener who's maybe involved in, you know, the underpinnings of this to see this maybe take shape over the next few years. That's totally awesome.
Don't measure yet, though, because in 10 years, you know, you might have changed your waist size or
Right.
all of this. You guys
Don't get too excited.
I don't know if you guys have discussed wearable illuminated clothing much, but Joel or Todd, either one, what do you think of the idea of just having something that could actually be a screen but also a shirt?
Well, I think if it's 10 years away, then they've got time to work spandex into it. So then you can have essentially an illuminated superhero suit.
Oh,
brilliant.
You know, as soon as you said the word spandex, I started to fear, but I like where you ended up with that.
How about you, Todd? Do you see a future where your clothes light up and people want that to happen?
Well, you mentioned earlier how, you know, what shape are you going to be in 10 years, and all you do is you put one of these suits on and you project an image of yourself but thinner.
Oh, see?
Oh, well, there you go.
Slimming illuminated clothing. I got it.
Or if you're too thin because of the global food shortage, it could make you look muscular.
Great. We'll be masking our terrible, terrible international nightmare with clothing to make us look fatter. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there are so many reasons to like this, and we've gone through them on shows before. But the idea that this stuff is re-wearable, that you can change it on a dime, that it, you know, doesn't necessarily need to be clean the way regular clothes do. Perhaps one day they're self-cleaning. Like the limitless possibilities of this kind of material are out there for us to behold. And I think it's awesome that maybe we're a decade away from it. I'm sure in a decade this stuff won't be cheap, even if we hit some sort of parity with what we expect with what they can do. But, you know, one day we can hope that Grandma's little sweater can be a nice little flashing number.
Well, the Christmas sweater will actually be an animated Christmas scene.
Right.
Animated
exactly.
reindeer, yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Rudolph the red-nosed, like really, honestly red-nosed reindeer. Let's move on to the short-term predictions. These are things you think will happen sooner rather than later. And Joel, we're going to kick it off with you. Let us know your prediction when you look in the near term.
In the near term, I think that we're going to see a huge embrace of entrepreneurship. I think that back to when I started my own company a few years ago, my uncle basically congratulated me and said, "You're never going to get rich working for somebody else." And it took a few years of really hard work to realize what he meant. And he wasn't necessarily talking about money. He was talking about time and how it's your own when you're essentially your own boss. So when I was growing up, it was always this pipeline. You go to high school, then you go on to university, and that was just kind of like what you did. I think what we're going to see is a change in that direction where people that might want to be tradesmen or might want to be in other professions being pushed towards entrepreneurship. Scott, I'm sure you can attest to the fact that the internet just makes this a lot easier now with the access to different things for running your own business from home. I mean, as a cartoonist and illustrator, you know, I think we both have a lot of the same sort of functions in a daily grind. And I think that what's going to happen is you're going to see that shift of people saying, this is what you want to do. This is how you're going to live your life and work independently, as opposed to being pushed towards, you know, doctors and lawyers and all that kind of stuff. We're still going to need them, but I think there's going to be a push for entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, and you'll see more of it. But I always think about this idea if I mean, I've embraced it, and I'm you know, feeling my way through this brave new space, and I'm trying to figure out what's right and what's the wrong practice and all this sort of stuff. But it keeps coming back to me that I don't think we ultimately want too many people going out on their own. And the reason I say that is there are certain natural infrastructures to society that we kind of need in place. And to do that, you need office buildings full of people doing certain kinds of tasks. And you need administrative people doing certain kinds of things. And it seems like if we start to lose that, and not saying that we ever would, but the idea of entrepreneurship is often more exciting than the actual act of it. And if it gets easier and easier for people to actually fulfill those dreams, would we, and so this is a question back to you, Joel, would we be digging into the infrastructure of, you know, society's workplace? Would we make ourselves weaker by all being so independent?
I don't know that the workforce would be the largest hit by this kind of a shift. I think you're going to see it more with tradesmen, sculptors, carpenters, even small business people, but there's still going to be room for big business. I think that you're going to find maybe just the little guy is more likely to try and do his own thing than join a slightly larger conglomerate that's doing the same thing.
Interesting. So Todd, throw it over to you. You're doing a lot of this kind of stuff. In fact, you are essentially an independent contractor. How do you see the future of doing stuff on your own?
I'd see it only getting easier and easier and easier. The degree of independence I've got now would have been extremely difficult, if not impossible, 10, 15 years ago. I would have to have some kind of administrative assistant or bookkeeper, just from the standpoint of, you know, automation of something as simple as keeping up the books on a small business. But I think we're probably going to continue along the same path we're on now of portable computing power just getting more and more remarkably faster and better and longer battery life, and reliable connectivity via wireless internet available more and more places. Well, we hope they finally get off their butts and reuse some of that TV spectrum for fun stuff. And we'll be able to do, you know, things even like what we're doing right now won't require, you know, the assemblage of gear we had to get together at each of our locations to do this. We would perhaps be able to, in 5-10 years, be able to be holding on to that year's version of the iPad and be doing this entire thing more or less effortlessly from wherever we happen to be sitting when it was time to do the show.
Yeah, I think the technology is going to make it easier and easier to do one-man enterprises, and we'll start to find out what are the things you actually do need an international conglomerate for. Because it seemed like the trend in the 1800s, 1900s, 20th century was to try to figure out how to run larger and larger enterprises so you could get those economies of scale, to the point where I think in the 70s, 60s and 70s, we peaked into having as many things as possible be large, and we started to realize, well, that's not optimal for some things. It actually introduces some negatives, and then technology came along that said, hey, we can actually make things a lot easier, so you don't have to have a $2 million truck to do live video broadcast. You don't have to have a really expensive factory to print out parts, and that's going to keep getting better till we finally find this balance. I think this is a really interesting prediction, and probably one of the closest to being true that we've had.
Absolutely. And I just think it's interesting to think about how different it really is from when my dad was struggling so hard to establish his own business when I was growing up in the 80s, mid-80s. And I just remember him just really struggling with it. And it was a cool business. We had arcades all over the valley. He was buying video games left and right. We had a garage full of Pac-Mans, I guess is how you'd say plural. We had my very own battle zone in my room, a stand-up battle zone coin-op freaking arcade game. I mean, it was a kid's dream, but I watched him just, pounding his head against the wall, trying to be as independent as he could without having to bring on too many investors and too many other third parties, and it was really hard for him. Now, what I'm doing is obviously completely different than him, although heavily influenced by that time of my life, but it's so much simpler, and I always say it would be really great if I could go back, or Joel, you could go back, talk to your 10-year-old self and say, hey, all that stuff you like doing, like you like tape recording stupid fake TV or radio shows all day, and you like drawing all day, and one day, you're actually going to do this. You're going to be an adult, and you'll be doing these things. And I would have laughed at my old fart self and said, no way, there's no way I'm going to get to do any of that. It's just that the systems in place and the kind of environment we live in now have provided us a way to do this finally. And I only see that getting more and more interesting. I think we're in for some tough turns. I think it's going to be a lot of because right now there's kind of a gold rush for stuff on the internet, and I just think some of that's going to take a turn as technology changes and standards change and younger generations come into it. That all makes it very interesting and sometimes volatile, but it'll be a fun ride.
So what you're saying is I will eventually, my job will be creating imaginary sports leagues?
Yes. Okay. Yes, Tom.
All right. It's good to know.
That's a nice little hint there you dropped.
I'm looking forward to that. Let's move over to you, Todd. Short-term predictions, things that will happen sooner rather than later, maybe in the next few years. What do you got for us?
I mean, on the theme earlier, I'm really been enjoying looking at just how the portable electronics with the addition of wireless interconnectivity, what that has been doing to our society in general. And I think we're just at the beginning of the curve. We've got devices with wide adoption now. It's no longer solely the purview of the nerdiest to have, the 21st century equivalent of the pocket calculator. Everyone wants an iPad now, or an iOS device or an Android tablet or something. And so the value and the power of the device is being consumed by the seething mass of humanity that are all the rest of the people. So they finally get it. And this is where I think we do still need the megacorps, because you're only going to get innovation and reasonably priced production of something like a portable computer from an Apple computer or from a Dell or somebody with that who's grown to that scale. That being said, what people do with these portable devices, I think, is only going to bring us back around to more of a village idea, where things such as what we're doing right now, we find each other over the internet, and don't want to say retreat, but we coalesce around groups of like-minded people, and these incredibly powerful, very rapidly interface devices let us do it from pretty much anywhere metropolitan right now. And I think before too much awfully long, you're going to be being able to do it from darn near anywhere. So I think it's just going to make us develop even more closely knit communities of not even necessarily the nerdiest of us, but just whatever your particular hobby or whatever brings you joy, you will find those other people and gather virtually instead of needing to find, the club in your town. You will find the online group, and you'll be able to do it from wherever you happen to be standing when you think about it.
So today, if you are interested in board games, and you want to find others like you, you go online, you know how to, because we're early adopters. We understand the tech. We're savvy about this stuff. So we go in and we say, all right, board games online, forums, whatever we search for. And Google gives us an answer, and we go join that forum, and we find out, man, that's an awesome forum. And I made all these new friends. And when we're all going to Gen Con, we're going to sit down and we're going to play D&D or whatever.
Yep.
That is all. So that's already happening for us.
Right.
What you're saying is we need it to happen for Grandma on the Sticks, who goes, man, I love scrapbooking. And there's already some of this too, of course. But the important thing is Grandma can say, man, I love scrapbooking. And she doesn't need to be super savvy. All she needs to really do is go to her equivalent of Facebook or whatever it is and say, scrapbooking. And bam, suddenly there's potentially hundreds of people near her or whatever. But here's my big question. Yes, it's all voice command. I want to make that clear. Grandma can just say it, and her robot computer will answer.
Scrapbooking.
But I want to know if what this leads to is more local, real people interaction, or does this separate us more physically and only bring us closer digitally, if that makes sense, Todd? How would you answer?
No, I understand where you're headed with that. And my gut reaction is to say, at least initially, it will probably fragment us more. People will... And as the ability to interface through, a handheld device in real time, I think the novelty of it, for one thing, will get people doing it, at least for the get-go, saying, wow, hey, and you look at, Google Plus Hangouts and that kind of idea of, with really little technical knowledge on the end of the user, you can hang out with people, live video on the internet, and I think that's only going to get easier and faster and better. So I think an initial... surge will be people will not leave the house and will mind meld with the computer more, and then moving the dial ahead a little further, there may be a reaction against that, and people will start to use the tools to meet people, and they say, okay, why don't we get together IRL since we found each other in our hometown? Let's go do this. But I think in the near term, probably more fragmentation and interacting just through the portal of the computing device.
I think both lead to each other, and they probably happen in cycles. So, I'm not saying you're wrong necessarily, but I think what happens is we create these communities online, and when you go back to what Scott was saying about the early adopters, after a while, what do we all start to do? We all say, well, when can we get together? Who's going to BlizzCon? Who's going to be at CES? Who's going to be at DragonCon? Who's going to be at PAX Prime? Because we all want to further that relationship. I think it's natural for human beings to want to, when they meet people of like mind, to interact in real time. I don't think that the fears, some of the people in the chat room are like, oh, it's sad, we'll never have real personal reactions. I don't think that's true. I think you'll definitely have real personal reactions. It's just a natural outgrowth of what we do. Joel, what do you think on this?
Well, I definitely think you're going to see a fragmentation of people getting sucked into their virtual environments a lot sooner than you're going to see the reach for meeting people in person. And I kind of do both. Like, there's a regular meetup here in the city called Third Wednesday, and it's a Twitter meetup. So you basically go to a bar, have a couple pints with a bunch of people that you really only know from Twitter. I mean, now I know them from Third Wednesday, but it started off with just Twitter. But when I'm out working at a cafe or something like that, getting out of the house, everybody has got their nose in a laptop, iPad, or iPhone, or some other kind of BlackBerry. It's all, everybody's just head down, earphones in, no one's looking up, no one's looking around. And I can see that getting much, much worse, to the point where people are, I still see people texting when they're crossing the street and doing all kinds of things that really are going to lead to, hopefully, an eventual departure, like what Todd said.
Well, here I have some totally anecdotal evidence of this, but again, it's a totally weird personal experience. I think a lot of this turns out to be perception. So I'm sitting over at my sister-in-law's last night. We were there for a birthday party, and my mother-in-law walks in right after my brother-in-law said, hey, do you know where I can find, I don't even know what it was, where I can find some kind of something on the internet. I said, actually, I know a great site, but let me make sure it's what I think it is. I pull out my phone, and I start ticky-tacking it away, and he's sitting over there next to me looking at a magazine. Well, that conversation was still sort of happening, but my mother-in-law just walked in, and her inclination is that all this technology is ruining our kids, and, this kind of talk. So the first thing she thinks is, and she comes around, puts her arms around my neck and says, I see we're being antisocial with our machines again. And I wanted to turn around and punch her because it's not what I was doing. What I was doing instead is I was having a real conversation with a real flesh and blood person about a real thing and was actually, you know, this give and take, helping somebody out. It was the complete opposite of her perception. So I just want to throw out there that I think that'll be part of the battle we fight.
Yeah,
is perception, and who who knows who wins that.
When someone is on the telephone now, do we say, oh, look who's being antisocial? No,
right.
Because we know we've internalized, oh, that's a normal way of communicating with someone. And we may get annoyed with teenagers who are on the phone for hours on end or whatever, but, you know, that's less about the medium. And I think it's just, you know, it's growing the medium to the point where everybody's used to it. And I think a lot of that attitude against, like, oh, look, you're being antisocial is just getting used to it. I even have that reaction sometimes if I'm out to dinner with my wife or friends and people start to look at their phones like, oh, you know, it used to be when you're at dinner, you'd look at each other and talk, and I get to feeling like an old man, like, oh, you're just going to ignore us during the dinner, huh? But really, that's going to be the norm in the future, and people are going to know when it's rude and when it's not, and we won't think of it that way. It'll just be another social norm that gets developed, I think.
Yep.
My lawn, get off it.
Yep.
Yeah. We won't need the dinner EMP.
I hope not.
Don't make me get the EMP.
Dinner time. Boom. Everything goes down. All right, let's move into the long-term predictions, Todd. And these are sort of the in 100 years sorts of things. What do you see down the road?
In 100 years, I think the people who want to do the self-manufacturing, the self-making idea will finally come into their own. I think the technologies that they can show now for doing small-scale, you know, self-manufacturing are fantastic. There's just certain roadblocks of raw materials and making it affordable and fast and reliable will take, I think, on the order of that kind of scale to actually come into their own. But the whole idea of having as close as we're ever likely to get to a Star Trek replicator, you know, in your home where you need an outfit for the day and nothing's clean, so you just print yourself a new one and can have an expectation that by the time you're done with breakfast, your shirt will be done. And
that's funny because right now you see somebody wearing like some sort of gimme T-shirt, some sort of logo T-shirt, and you're like, ran out of clean clothes, huh? So the new sign of that will be a freshly printed shirt.
Exactly. Either that, or they will be the 100 years from now version of a hipster, and they'll deliberately print a logo T-shirt that looks like it was slept in.
Right.
Just because.
Well, it'd be really cool for renewable reasons if you could just have a machine that you had your prefab shirt and you made it and you liked it that day, and it was a hoodie or something because it was a little chilly out. But the next day it was a little warmer. It'd be great to be able to just throw that in some sort of oven thing, slam the door and say, all right, well, tomorrow's warmer. I want a T-shirt, and there's a little left over, so give me, I don't know, a do-rap or something. And just hit go, and boop, and all that material is just reconstituted, reused all the time. There's no such thing anymore as washers and dryers or the need for laundry. It's literally taking your stuff, even if it's your nasty gym clothes, and you put them in there, it strips all the pollutants out of there and creates this raw material again that you can then choose to make whatever you want anytime you want. I'm going on a date, and it's a really fancy dinner. I need a tux. Fine. Here's your tux. Yesterday it was a jockstrap and a tank top. You know, whatever. That's kind of nasty, but you know what I mean. I love the idea that we can just keep using this stuff and never have to worry about buying new stuff. So I throw it to you, Joel. How do you see not just clothes, everything? How renewable can we make this world, and how will we truly come into our own as self-manufacturing beings?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned not just clothes, because that's exactly where I was going with it. I mean, you're only going to be limited to the knowledge of the user. So if you happen to be a mechanic, or if you happen to be an electrical engineer, and you need a new part for your electric flying car in 100 years, and you can just say, damn, the turbo lift thing is gone. I can just print a new one and install it myself. I don't have to, provided that you have the raw materials to do it. Maybe you have to, ransack your kid's closet and melt down 8 or 9 different logo T-shirts to get your new electric, carburetor, but whatever, like it'll all jive, and it all, like you said, you can take something from one thing that you're not using anymore and reconstitute it into something useful and new.
What do you say, Tom? You want to recycle that shirt?
I do want to recycle a shirt. It's getting a little old.
I was going to say. I wasn't going to say anything. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it.
It's a little floppy. No, I agree with all of this. I think we are definitely headed towards a road where the makers will become a legitimate and significant part of the manufacturing economy. And it may not even be that long. I mean, I know you're putting this in the long-term predictions, and it's probably not the next couple of years, so it belongs there. But not even 100 years. I might shorten it up to 20 to 50 myself, because 3D printers they're about in that stage where the computers were at the Heathkit, you know, and maybe the MakerBot is, you know, around the Apple II stage of 3D printers. But within 10, 20 years, you know, we're going to be having those nice desktop 3D printers that almost anybody can buy and fuel up and print out plastic parts and little widgets and prototypes and things. And it wouldn't be too long after that the hobbyists, the folks who are really into it, will be printing out amazing stuff, and we get the clothes that we can just keep recycling through. Of course, then the value add will be the illuminated clothing, right?
But of course.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right. The part of me, maybe it's just my shortcoming, not being able to wrap my head around the kinds of efficiencies that nanotechnologies can bring to bear on this. The idea of unzipping it back down to useful molecules and putting it back together again to make it into something else. I just might be hitting my old man wall with that. Oh no, that sounds too Star Trek to me. The efficiency of a really almost completely closed system where you can really reuse and really make a wide variety. The thing that makes me think it's further in the future is we may see some categories of making device like that, but I don't think it'll really come into its own where you can make almost anything you need that's not a complex piece of electronics just in your daily life. I think it'll really arrive in that 70 to 100 year time frame where you're doing everything with your own device, and the need for a department store falls off the edge of the table.
And Apple's iMaker will print out black turtlenecks.
Right.
Of course.
And that's it.
And jeans.
All the priests in the Church of Steve will have to
Church of Jobs, exactly. All right, let's turn to you, Joel. When you look farther down the road in the flying car direction, what kind of prediction do you have for us?
Well, it's funny that Todd went here with the 3D printing, because that's where mine is actually going too, and I was trying hard not to get ahead of myself with
not to spoil yourself
to his prediction. And I think, like you said, Tom, my prediction is more like 25 to 50 as opposed to 50 to 100 years. As home 3D printing becomes more accessible to everybody, like we've been talking about, and also the advances in things like the DECA arm, which was a prosthetic arm that the government was developing. It was like a 2009 CBS story. And I think what you're going to find is people are going to be able to print off more durable material, and they're going to be able to then, if they're an amputee, design, augment, tweak their own prosthetic. And if that's the case, the more expressive amongst us might not want a rubber flesh-colored prosthetic. Maybe they want something that's
to read on your way to the city.
fire engine red, or like maybe silver with pink or gold inlaid jewels for the minimalists, or maybe something crazy. Like, imagine if Lady Gaga was designing her own prosthetic.
Oh God, please no.
Isn't she already? Yeah. Kind of, but yes. No, I get where you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys don't understand. She is a Cabbage Patch-sized doll right now, living inside a prosthetic. I'm trying to get the word out. That's what's going on.
Wow.
Sorry, Joel. Continue.
No, that was it. I think that we're going to see some really unique kind of changes to the way that people treat the way that they've lost a limb or have something going on like that, where they can actually then take advantage of their loss and become expressive, as well as maybe even augment the functionality. I mean, maybe going a little bit ahead of time, like having different servos or different motors or different sensibilities or different ranges of motion, depending on what they really want to do. I mean, maybe they design it so sleek that it looks indistinguishable from a regular human arm, or maybe they just make it look like Optimus Prime.
Well,
I'm kind of leaning on the Optimus Prime side, but that's just me.
Imagine the average rebellious teenager who in the past went punk to rebel against their parents.
Oh, yeah.
What would they have done with the availability of this kind of technology to express their rebellion and wrap your head around that? There's your creative force for doing interesting things with self-made prosthetics and augmentation, and the mind wobbles.
Well, anytime you give this tech to a mass of people with fresh minds, they come up with ways of using it that the designers never thought of. And I would really look forward to seeing how all of that would go. Your prediction, Joel, seems to mirror what I heard in an interview on NPR, and I don't remember the show or the point of it, other than there was a guy who in the early 80s had an accident on a mountain where he got lost and it got too cold, and due to frostbite ended up losing both his legs. And since then, or right near, as soon as he got out of there, really, he put his head to, how do you do better prosthetics? How do we make them better and better every year? How do we let people have more control over the kind of prosthetics they want? And he now has something like 100 and something legs that he can choose from. He has some for running, for not running, for all these different kinds of activities. And he claims that in each of those cases, because he gets to choose what he wants to wear, he's actually at a unfair advantage over his fellow humans, because he has got better stuff for the moment, for the thing he needs to do. And he was talking big talk about how, he's been afforded this idea of being able to just constantly change up his prosthetics as he works now for, it was MIT or somebody, where they're just doing this all day long. So he's this one lucky guy that gets to test everything. But he had a real vision for a day when people in those positions would, literally have so much choice or so much ability to have the prosthetics themselves be able to change those on the fly, that they would no longer be seen as handicapped at all, that these people would actually be seen as perhaps having a bit of an advantage in certain physical ways. And I found it really fascinating, and you seem to sort of mirror that idea. I like that one a lot. That's a good prediction. I hope that one happens, because it seems like a lot of people would benefit from it.
You just need to be able to take those 100 legs and transform them within one unit. So you don't have to keep, carry 3 or 4 with you in case of whatever it is that you need to do.
Yeah, it's one thing the guy complained about. He said when he would travel, he'd have to have a big suitcase full of like legs. 6 different pairs of legs. And that's no good.
Can you imagine going through the TSA checkpoint?
Are these your legs? Have they been with you the whole time? Yeah.
Yes, those are my legs. All right, let's move on to the crazy-ass predictions. One really far out there forecast, and Joel will stick with you to start us off. What is your crazy prediction?
Well, for crazy stuff, I thought I'd try to stay positive. So no black holes in the middle of the planet. But I think eventually what's going to happen is 2 major events will redefine humans as a species. The first is going to be an encounter with an alien race, and the second is going to be a balance of religious beliefs. And I think I was discussing this with a friend over the weekend, and we were having trouble finding the right word because everything else seemed too harsh, but balance just seemed to be the best choice, for the lack of a better term. I don't think religion will really disappear, because despite centuries of conflict, I think there's still some positive things that we can get from that. But I think the realization that we're not alone in the universe will help us bridge religion to more of a spiritual place than the set of rules that define religions right now. And to really go far out there, the aliens are going to be intelligent descendants of dinosaurs. If you watched Dino Riders like I did when I was 10, then you know exactly what I mean.
All right, fair enough. So, interesting. Do you the balance of religious beliefs thing? I just want to focus on that for a second, because there's a lot of doom and gloom on FourCast about this issue and how, it feels like things are going to come to a head, and that already, much of the world's upheaval has roots in religious differences and things like that.
For thousands of years, yeah.
Not even just now. It's just that we can't seem to shake it, is what seems weird about now. But on the other hand, see, I've always been of 2 minds with this. I can't stand that, but I also like the idea that somebody has a prescribed list of perhaps values, and you don't have to be in a religion to have these necessarily, but sometimes religion encourages people to exhibit good moral behavior, meaning they're kind to others, they're helpful, they're all those things that everyone espouses to be, until they fight over land and kill each other for different reasons. But you know what I'm saying? There's good to be had there. Where is that parity found? Like, is it just simply that they all come together and go, all right, fine, look, you Muslims, you Christians, you Buddhists, we all have these common 10 things. Let's just all sign some sort of agreement or whatever that says these 10 things are the mandate across the board. This is the focus, and this brings people closer to themselves in a spiritual way, if that's the way they describe it, or whatever. Is that, am I on to what you're saying? Is that how we find that parity, or is it some other way?
I think that's exactly what I was getting at. Yeah, so you find the similarities, and I think it's just going to take something really massive to do that. I think to convince people to see those similarities, which are there now, but no one seems to be able to grasp. I feel like they need to, something large needs to happen, and maybe that's a catastrophic thing on the planet. Maybe that's an intelligent, encounter with alien life. Something is just going to jar everybody to just kind of take a step back and say, okay, we're so similar, in a lot of ways in terms of our religious beliefs, but yet we're so segregated. So what are the real reasons for these segregations? I mean, it's obviously not something that's going to happen overnight, because there's so much history there, but it's the positive outlook, it's the way that I would really hope things would turn out in the end, because otherwise it just seems like it's going to be very negative for a long time.
I think one of the major causes of conflict is a sense of tribalism, and we don't normally call it that, but it's sort of like, this is us, and this is what we believe as a group, as a nation, as a tribe, and they are threatening it. And I think I totally agree with you, Joel, that if we were to meet an alien race, suddenly we stop seeing ourselves as a collection of differences, and we are unified, not even against an enemy per se, but against an other. That is a huge other, and it would change our perception. Well, we'll get to the Dino Riders thing in a minute, Tony, but it will change our perception. He's very excited. It'll change our perception of who we are as a species, and we'll think of ourselves as, oh, well, we are all human, and that is the other, that we as a human tribe. That's always been the thought anyway, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. I also agree with the dino aspect of it, Joel, because I have seen pictures of mock-ups of what a bipedal dinosaur descendant would have been if they hadn't gone extinct, and it looks exactly like the grays that people in alien abduction stories talk about.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, weird. Oh, you're freaking me out now.
He's just saying.
The Rulons are coming.
The evidence is there, people.
Yeah, I want to get Todd's take on this, but I want to say this real quick. If science fiction and TV have taught me anything, it's that an hour is not really an hour. It's only 40 minutes, and the rest are commercials. No, that's not what I mean.
Unless you're watching the BBC.
Yeah, that's true. Then it's in between everything. But I think that what I've learned from Star Trek, for example, or what they tried to teach me in First Contact was, everybody's pretty messed up until the Vulcans show up, and then that changes everything. So I'm kind of with Tom here. It feels like the paradigm change we're looking for is something so much bigger than our pettiness. It's got to be something that comes in and says, look at us, our ships are as big as your cities. We come in peace, but hey, what's up? And we have to go, whoa. We have to stop everything and go, suddenly rush hour traffic doesn't seem like that big a deal. Suddenly the burrito I had for lunch is a distant memory. Now it's this huge ship with these weird creatures, and it's a new ball game moving forward. And I feel like, hopefully that's all very positive, because a lot of science fiction tells me that it won't be. But that hopefully is the thing that will change the way we look at each other anyway. So Todd, anything else to add to this whole alien world thing?
Well, whatever the external event may turn out to be, I agree that there would probably have to be some kind of earth-shaking event to shake people out of their "my God is yet better than your God" kind of attitude. And what I hope would come out of the other side, be that a natural catastrophe, a catastrophe of our own making, or an external force like being visited by the other for the first time. But I hope that we would come out of that with the realization that, okay, what the common goal of every religion has always been really was to make better people. And if people can simply just realize that your religion and my religion and their religion, they all say basically the same thing, which is be good to each other, and here's a good framework of rules for being good to each other. We would like to make better people. And hopefully we would come out the other end of this with just a set of rules for dealing with each other that are religion-like, but are basically, here's how to be good to each other, and here's how to make better people progressively as the human race goes forward. So I hope that's what all religions eventually turn into, is this one thing that we all agree upon is yes, this is how we should behave towards each other, and it's no longer necessary that my version of the rule book, that's goal is exactly the same as your rule book, is better in some way.
Yeah, and I feel it would be a great act of solidarity, but also, and some would argue this, and I would argue it also, you don't necessarily need a religious body to promote good behavior, for example. And also, I can just hear the trolls, the religious trolls of the day freaking out because nobody, not everybody's going to want a set rule. Well, those aren't my rules. My religion is throwing snowballs at old ladies, and I want to do it all day. Well, okay, you don't, I mean, it's like you're always going to have that, right? You're always going to have that thing. Right, the old ladyists is what they prefer to be called, Tom.
That's a technical name, I know.
The Church of Calvin Hobbes.
Yeah.
The great devil Susie Durkins.
Exactly. But you know what I mean? Like I'm pessimistic that this will ever happen, but I'm optimistic, or I guess I hope that kind of common ground can be found. Because I just, more than anything, it would be just a great show of unity in a time where they're so separated, and even religions that are just 2 or 3 tenets away from each other, just poop it all away for.
Yeah, that's why I prefaced it with there would have to be an earth-shattering event to bring people around to this, because history has demonstrated that left to our own devices, we're not going to get there. Something needs to happen.
I like the idea.
Or it's going to be too slow to get there.
Yeah. I like the idea of be good to each other. But yeah, Joe brings up a good point. We will be eliminated for a hyperspace bypass before any of this happens. So
this is true.
Let's move on to your crazy-ass prediction. Todd, time frame doesn't matter. Just take the leap. What do you got?
I think the big thing that could happen is the invention of, for lack of a better term, the disintegrator ray, or just a disintegrating technology, meaning some probably nanotechnology will lead to this, the ability to take matter and in a controlled fashion disassemble it to basically whatever base atoms or molecules you want to take it down to. And if you consider, if we had that ability, the number of nasty materials that could be eliminated into harmless and useful materials, that would just be so unbelievably revolutionary. No more toxic waste dumps, no more nasty side effects from procedures or technologies, because if you came up with a great way of manufacturing a new technology, but oh god, it makes 55-gallon drums of toxic sludge, if that was no longer a consideration, so, well, we'll just put the toxic sludge through the disintegrator ray and we'll get hydrogen and water out of it and all will be well. That just opens the floodgates on all kinds of innovation and reuse of materials and basically the elimination of all nasty and harmful chemicals from our environment. I think that would just be the ultimate game changer. It would take away all the major downsides of the advance of technology.
All right, so I like where you're going, but I like the butts on this show.
But.
How this stuff's got to go somewhere. So, do you see any current day technology that will one day? I know we're talking crazy ass, and so it's it's hard to nitpick. But what are we doing now to work toward a time where we can truly get rid of the stuff that's bad and only keep the stuff that's good?
Well, I mean, the whole point of this is you don't get rid of it; you change it. So you're left with you have a 50-gallon drum of unbelievably toxic sludge, and now you have a 20-gallon drum of pure water and the hydrogen and nitrogen that just went into the atmosphere. So where do you put it? Anywhere you want, because it's pure water and hydrogen.
The hydrogen is poisoning our atmosphere. We need to stop these hydrogen emissions.
But again, you could do fix the hole in the ozone layer. Let's just disintegrate some big boulders that are in the way of that bypass and turn them into more ozone.
Are you essentially saying better living through chemistry?
Better living through nanotechnology anyway. I'm not sure if it'd be chemical, but
okay, yeah. Well, the chemicals are at the end. Yeah.
Too much clean drinking water. I don't know if that's good for the future of our children.
This is indeed what we find. You're a very strange man. It must be the beard.
Well, what do you say over there, Joel? What do you say about the future of nanites taking the crap out of your crap so you can eat it again? That sounds terrible. I take all that back.
It sounds an awful lot like the Illudium Q36 space modulator, and I'm not entirely sure I'm on board for that. I don't know. It would depend on what would happen first. If everybody was able to kind of calm down and be at peace with everybody, then this sounds like a great idea. But if there's still wars going on, a disintegration ray sounds like
it sounds like
a remarkably bad idea.
The potential for misuse is galactic, yes, but we're in dreamland and hoping for the best here. But I think it would certainly it would be a revolutionary technology now. Instead, if you used it to disintegrate nations, that's a different kind of conversation.
There is a similarity to dynamite, which won the Nobel Peace Prize because it was invented for peaceful uses, and then look what we found we could do with it. It's cool at killing people. And eventually we get C4. All right, I believe, Scott, it is time for 4 questions.
That's right. 4 questions is where we ask our guests 4 questions, rapid-fire style. They do not have time to think about it too hard. They must answer from the gut. I will ask my questions of Joel. Joel, are you sitting comfortably, sir?
I'm standing, but I can pretend.
All right.
Are
in
you
the
standing
future,
comfortably?
Oh, good. Standing comfortably. So am I, actually. Standing desks. Look at us.
Yeah.
Another prediction.
In the future, which would you rather draw cartoons with? Your mind or your dreams? And there is a difference.
Whoa, dude.
Ooh, dreams.
Okay, that's the right answer. Number 2, Wacom 24 HD tablet or paper and pen?
Paper and pen, because I don't think I can have too many more glitches with paper and pen.
That's true. I always feel like I'm on borrowed time.
Pens run out of ink. But yeah,
Seriously, I was using my Wacom today going, man, if you quit working right now, I'd be screwed. I need like a backup Wacom, and nobody can afford that. Anyway, when they make a video game about your life, what do you hope the title is?
Rock'em Sock'em 3.
Whoa, a sequel. Awesome. All right. Who will play? Will Wolverine play you in the film? Not Wolverine.
Yes, as a matter of fact, Hugh Jackman will play me.
Hugh Jackman, yeah.
I can see that, yeah.
You know, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm really looking forward to that movie. I realize it's totally stupid.
So bad.
It looks terrible, but I really want to see it.
You're wrong to feel that way.
I don't know. I don't know what I think. How about this question as our 4th? Liquefied meat or meat-flavored liquid?
Meat-flavored liquid?
Ooh, either way, it's a terrible answer.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
But congratulations, you did a great job. You have officially passed 4 questions. Nice job.
Todd, we turn to you. Are you sitting comfortably, sir?
I am, in fact, sitting comfortably.
Good, then we will begin. Question number 1, will you personally ever live outside of planet Earth?
Sadly, seems fairly unlikely as badly as I want it.
Okay. So it was going to be my follow-up, as if that was because you chose not to or you just wouldn't get the opportunity.
Oh, no. Sell me a ticket now.
Yeah. You'll get on that rocket.
Oh, yes.
Question number 2, will we humans always have bodies? Machine or biological? It doesn't matter.
I was going to say, this is a singularity question.
Are we going to become the floating consciousness someday?
I think copies of our consciousness will be made, but I don't think that will transfer the original. So, yeah, you'll be able to copy yourself off in a computronium, but you're going to die.
Will they keep the originals of us in our in a cardboard slab or slider in like a plastic bag just to make sure we're mint? Is that how that'll work?
People like you will, yeah.
Don't open up Scott. He's mint. Yeah. He's not mint anymore.
Inboxed.
Question number 3, will we ever see in more than 3 dimensions?
We already do.
Well, I'm not. Don't count. Yeah, let's discount the whole time thing. I'm 3 physical dimensions.
Highly unlikely. We're just going to be stuck looking at tesseracts, I think.
All right. And question number 4, beer has lasted through thousands of years as a popular human food. Will pizza have a chance of lasting as long?
They are inextricably linked from the first time they were served together. Pizza and beer is eternal.
So you're saying pizza's going to ride beer's coattails to eternity?
You're damn right.
Excellent answer.
Wow.
And thank you both. I really appreciate you joining us for FourCast today.
Had a wonderful time. Thank you for having me.
Joel
Thanks
Duggan,
for having me on, yeah.
Cartoonist, illustrator, and podcaster. Joel, let folks know where they can find your work online.
They can find me at starcrossedonline.com. I do a new webcomic every Monday. Just posted one earlier today, and it's about dating and aliens. So check it out.
Excellent. And Todd Gnomewise Whitehead, founding member of Versus the World Productions and so many other things, including many, many cool podcasts. Let folks know where they can find your stuff.
They can find me on Versus the World Productions, vtwproductions.com. I'm on live every Sunday at the very least. And then also every Friday, as long as I can corral people to come be interviewed on Alpha Geek Interviews. And I think, Tom, you're next.
All right. I'm in your crosshairs. I understand. Scott Johnson, what else do we have to say before we let these folks go?
Well, nothing other than to say
All right,
this.
that's it, everybody.
I just, since we have Todd on, I think it would be, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the morning stream, the Frog Pants Morning Show, airing every Monday through Thursday. Tom's actually part of it on Wednesdays, which we absolutely love that part of the show. And the reason Todd's involved, he provides a Shoutcast audio stream every morning of the live proceedings. So if you'd like to know more, go to frogpants.com/TMS and get all you can from there.
That's it for us, folks. You can find us on the web, fourcastpodcast.com. It's F-O-U-R, fourcastpodcast.com. And you can email us your thoughts and your predictions, fourcastpodcast@gmail.com, or post them up at the blog. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
But it's only 32 years away.
Wait. Oh, got in early. GTG again right there is what that is.
That's right. Getting things early.